Mr. Mike Heisley.
Well, that's a pretty good example of having confusion on what I'm going to say and what he's going to say, but anyway, so be it. I'd like to say a couple of things first. Number one, I want to really thank the university, Memphis University. It would have been very, very easy for Memphis University to see that a professional team coming into town would put a competitive organization in with the basketball team and so on. And far from that, president, the head of athletics, the coach, everybody associated with the University of Memphis has been nothing but a dedicated partner to helping us make the Grizzlies a part of this community. And for that, I will always be grateful and always be thankful. So thank you, President Raines, and so much. One last thing before I get into it, and please excuse me, because it is one of the great people that was associated with this university, Coach Gene Bartow. I'm going to be leaving here today and flying down to Birmingham to see him. He's seriously ill. And it would mean a lot to me and him, and I think all of us, if each one of you, if it's so inclined, would say a little prayer for Gene Bartow. He meant a lot to this university, he meant a lot to the Grizzlies, and he means a lot to a lot of people in this city. So he needs your prayers. Okay, please excuse me for that. I was sort of trying to figure out what I would say today, and one of the first things I thought I would get into before I got into the Grizzlies, and then at the end, since Chris has said a lot of things about the Grizzlies, I'll say a few words and then open myself up for questions. But first of all, I think on all of our minds, especially people that have attended or associated with a graduate business school, the current economic situation in this country is something which we all are deeply concerned about and very, very upset. I would only like to sort of step back a little bit, because I'm sure there are other people in this room who may be my age, but 75 years of age, I have gone through more than several cycles in the business climate in this great country. And I'd just like to take this forum, if you please excuse me, just for a second to put our perspective in order. This country has gone through crisis after crisis after crisis since it was founded. Once it was founded, it had two of the greatest world powers trying to take over the country, both Britain and France. And we managed through various means to protect this country and have it see and grow. The country went through a number of economic crisis in its early days, which eventually led up to the Great Depression that went from about 1930 through 1940. The country went through the Great War and basically carried the free world on its back and was mainly responsible for the destruction of Nazi Germany and the protection of the civilization that we all enjoy today. And in my time, the country has gone through a number of financial crises which have also been very severe. After each one of those crises, the country basically has come back and come back stronger. I never forget meeting a gentleman when I was just starting out, David Sarnoff, who was head of the company I went with first, RCA. He founded it. He's one of the great American businessmen. And he said to me, because I gave a speech and he wanted to talk to me, and I came up, and I've been with the company a year and a half, and he said, Mike, I only have one piece of advice to you. Just remember, in times of turmoil and desperation, great opportunity is created. And that's what I have to say to young people here today that are basically starting out on your career. Great opportunity is here. It may be difficult to see it. You may not necessarily be presented to you on a platter, but great opportunity is here. Very briefly, in my career, when I started that company that Chris mentioned, I took $150,000 from the sale of my house. It's all the money we had. Didn't tell my wife, which was a huge mistake. It was like, which it turned out later to be really a huge mistake. But I'll tell you, one thing it taught me is I now know what it feels like to have a mistress, and I can do without that. But anyway, I took $150,000. I put it into a bankrupt company, borrowed $15 million. I was the first LBO that the Continental Bank, which is used to be one of the big banks in this country, ever did. They wanted to start off small, so they started off with me, lent me $15 million on an asset-based loan. And I put $150,000 in, and Jimmy Carter was in place at that time. My interest went to 23.5% on that loan while I was doing it. If you ever want to learn how to manage a business for cash, be paying 23.5% interest. Believe me, it was the greatest lesson I ever had in my life. It showed discipline to me and my organization. And my lovely wife, we had to have a place to live, so I moved her into first what I thought was very creative. I had no place to go. I'd put a letter of credit up for $1 million. When the bank asked for that, I thought, what the hell? They want $1 million. I give them $10 million. I ain't got anything. So what's that guarantee worth? Well, little did I know, it also meant I couldn't borrow any money. And the second thing is I didn't have any money. And so my wife, we had sold the house, and I'd used the money, and the people were moving in, and she kept calling up saying, where am I moving this furniture? We had 5 children. And I kept giving her some story and so on, which got deeper and deeper. And you should understand, my wife and I'm pretty talkative. We spend every morning from 4:30 to 5:30 talking to each other, because when you have 5 kids, that's the only time you have a chance to really have a conversation. So it wasn't like I didn't have the opportunity to let her know what was going on. And the worse it got, the worse the pressure got. So I was driving down the road, and I swear it's God's truth, this is what opportunity and creativity is. I'm driving down the road, got no way where in the house. They're getting ready to move the furniture out in a matter of a week. What am I going to do? And I looked over, and there's this little subdivision that has a sign on it, because if you remember back in around 1980, there was a real estate crisis in this country too. And so I looked over and it said this little subdivision, which had a model home, 3 homes completed and about 3 or 4 under construction, was in bankruptcy. And so I thought, I got this idea, and I turned left and went into this little bank in St. Charles, Illinois. That's how I ended up moving there. And I said to the guy, I said, I'd like to talk to the head guy, and this young man came out who was vice president and so on. He was really excited, because he said, I understand you're interested in that model home, in that subdivision. I said, I am. And he says, well, what can we do for you? And I said, well, I was thinking, if you let me and my wife and my children live in the model home, then I can assure you we will provide on-site security, and you'll save quite a bit of money on your insurance. And this guy looked at me, and I said, I'm not kidding. He said, are you kidding me? And I said, no, I'm serious. So, I said, here's my card. If you check, let me know. I had no idea this guy was going to follow through on that. Well, my wife calls up, and she says, Michael, they coming Monday. What are we going to do? I said, I'm working on it. Don't worry about it. This is like Thursday. And so she hangs up, and God was there, because the phone rings, and it's this guy. And he says, I checked with the insurance company. You're right. How soon can you move in? I said, is Monday too soon? And that's how we moved to Illinois. So help me God. That's what I'm talking about. Opportunity sometimes is. Anyway, I've always felt that now is the time to really be looking for investments. When people's attitudes are down, the opportunities are up. And I don't say that I'm a great gambler, because I'm not. I just believe truly that there is opportunity out there. And for you younger people who are basically starting out on your career, remember that there is always opportunity. And when people are the lowest, the opportunity is the greatest. And so I would do. I'd then like to switch, if you will allow me, to the Grizzlies. First of all, this country has been incredibly good to me. My family, we were relatively, I used to say I was lower middle income, but a lot of people think that's poor, which I guess it was. We were pretty poor. And I was fortunate enough to have a father where he couldn't help us. His whole objective in life, he had 4 sons, was that they each get a college education, when in my high school and the people in my neighborhood, my brothers and I were the only ones that had a college education out of probably, I don't know, 50 or 100 families. And so that was the great opportunity and great gift my father gave to me. He deeply respected education, and I deeply respect education. I've been involved in various things to help educational communities for a long time. I also, because I made a lot of money, I firmly believe that this country gave me a lot, and I have a duty to give back. And as I tell my children, there's nothing more corrosive than money if you don't share it with people around you and organizations and so on. And so we have done other things, and I'm sure there are other people in the world, a lot of people in the world done a lot more than me, but I want to make one point. I was fortunate enough to be in Chicago when the Chicago Bulls were nothing. And then they drafted a man named Michael Jordan, and the Chicago Bulls started winning, and Michael Jordan was the most exciting guy on the planet, and the city of Chicago was totally transformed. And that's a big city, and he had that impact. And I always said to myself, someday I would love to own a basketball team, and in a small way try to do for a city what Michael Jordan did for Chicago. And so the opportunity came for me to buy a basketball team in Vancouver, British Columbia. We moved out of there, not for any other reason, really, truthfully, than the fact that the Canadian dollar dropped to 63 cents to the American dollar. I was paying players in U.S. dollars and collecting ticket revenue in Canadian dollars, and the numbers I will not bore you with, but believe me, they were high double-digit millions for that 1 year I was there. So we had to move. And I decided that I wanted to find a city where I thought that I could make a difference. And we went, and we must have visited 15 cities around the United States. And we visited Memphis, and Memphis appeared to me to be a city where I felt very, very much at home. I grew up in the South, tremendously impressed with the, Civil Rights Museum, what I learned there. I was impressed with the city, with its religious heritage and so on. And quite frankly, I thought that maybe if we did a good job, we could do something for the city of Memphis. And I have to tell you, there's not too many things in my life that gave me greater pleasure than to experience the playoff run that the Grizzlies had, and to see these screaming fans in that arena. And I couldn't take the pressure, so I got up and walked out in the close portions of the game, because I just couldn't take the pressure. And so one of the games I walked out, and I walked outside, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people standing outside of the arena, and I looked down, and Beale Street was absolutely jammed with people, and the city just was really excited. And I thought, well, maybe we did something to make it a little bit better when the great floods were going. Anyway, I just want to say, and I'll open up the question, I just want to say to you, I can honestly say that I have never had any second questions in my mind about whether I made a great choice when I decided to come to this city. I hope someday the city appreciates the Grizzlies as much as I appreciate the city. So thank you very much. And now, if you would like, I'll open it up to any questions, and then you can tell me, sit down, okay? 5 minutes. 5 minutes? 5 minutes of questions. If anybody's got a question. I don't have very many answers, but I'll do my best. Well.
What are the odds that there will be a season this year?
I knew we'd get into, I have a very limited ability of what I can say, but I can tell you honestly, it's not really a hindrance because I know very little. I'm not on the negotiating committee, so I couldn't tell you. I can only tell you that I think on both sides, all of us hope that we have a season. Both the players want to play, and the owners want to play, and the management of the league wants to play, and it's a difficult negotiation, and they're all working very hard. Believe me, David Stern was sick. He had the flu, and he was still in the negotiations, and he had, I'm not sure whether he went to the hospital, but he was bedridden after the last session. So people are really serious. They really want to have a season, and but I've been through a number of negotiations. It's not, it's a tough process. Yes, ma'am. Oh, hi.
Thank you, Mr. Isley, for the commendation about the university, but I want to say you may be a Grizzly, but today we're making you a Tiger.
Well, thank you very much. And I got to say that R.C. invites me to the games and so on, and he absolutely invited me to the Georgetown game. I was conveniently somewhere else because I didn't want to have R.C. sitting next to me and the president of Georgetown, who's a close friend of mine, watching me with binoculars. I'll tell you that right now. So I thought, how am I going to handle this? Well, I handled it the best way possible. I wasn't there. Any other questions? Yes?
You bought a bankrupt company. What did you know about the company before you bought it?
What did I know about it? When I buy a bankrupt company, I know more about it than the people that ran it. And one of the reasons we were successful is because I didn't start a fund. For many reasons. One, I didn't know how to go about doing it, but we didn't start a fund, and therefore the people who worked for one of the companies I bought, in effect, worked for me, and I could use them in a fund where you have different investors and so on. That's not easy to do. So when I went out to do my due diligence, we took a number of people. We bought the second largest steel company in Canada. We had 20-some people on the team. I had the guy that was in charge of machinery and equipment. He basically was up there looking at the machinery and equipment and ascertaining what we would have to do in terms of new equipment and so on. We had the man in charge of the tool room looking at all the tools. We put together, and it's why I'm somewhat shocked at the surprise, every deal we do, we put together the budget for next year and the 3-year plan. And we operate the company on that budget before we put the first dollar into buying the company. So when we buy it's a very expensive way to do it, but quite frankly, we have never did a turnaround that wasn't successful, simply because we knew exactly what we were doing, what we're going to do. We knew who we're going to keep and who not. On that subject, generally speaking, people ask me, how do you know how to fix the company? I simply ask the people in the company. Generally speaking, the people in the company know what's got to be done to fix the company. The problem is management never had the will to take the measures that were necessary to do it. And as far as Mike Heisley being a genius, my genius was being able to surround myself with people who had worked for me, a large number of them, for 40 years or more. And they are close. We're close. We've been together. I don't mean 4 or 5 people. I mean 25 or 30 people. And anyone who thinks an individual can run 40 companies or even begin to run anything like 40 companies is a nut. You know, and I'm no genius by any stretch of the imagination. And I've had fantastic people since Stan didn't come with us tonight. I have a lawyer named Stan Meadows who's been with me right from the beginning, and anybody that's ever dealt with Stan Meadows knows that he is one of the brightest lawyers you'll ever meet in your life, and he probably has done more for HEYCO than I have done for HEYCO, and I could go on and on about the people. And when we get to the Grizzlies, let me say one thing. Chris Wallace is the architect of the turnaround of the Grizzlies, not Mike Heisley. Okay? Any other questions? How close are we to 5 minutes? Is that it? That's it. Thank you.